Hello everyone and welcome to Farm Bureau's Voices of Agriculture. This week coming to you from the state of Mississippi. On the show this time, we visit a deer farm in South Mississippi.
I decided to start trying to help with the farming, but I decided, well shoot, wouldn't it be nice to just have some deer on the property? And at the time, I really had not thought about what that meant, but I started learning about it and reading about it.
We have a report on an event that matches farmers with legislators.
Well, it means everything in the world that when people come to Jackson and the rest of the legislature see the rural people out of rural Mississippi come to Jackson, present their issues, it makes all the difference in the world. I don't know what the rural people would do without Farm Bureau. It means a lot.
And we also visit a high school in North Mississippi that has an innovative agriculture program.
They are learning more about, instead of just going to the store and getting the lumber, they're seeing what the sawmills and loggers are doing to actually get that product on the shelf for them that they normally go buy. They're learning board footage. They can figure out each day in a class period how much board footage they can cut in one period and figure out ways to be able to be more efficient.
In our Meet a Farmer segment this time, we visit a dairy farm in North Mississippi. And of course, we'll have our Mississippi on the Menu segment with Nancy Freeman. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
When most people think of agriculture, they think of food, clothing, and shelter.
I grow spark plugs, and I grow toothpaste.
I grow crayons and truck seats.
Well, I raise guitar strings and emery boards.
Advancements in technology have allowed us to develop new uses for common agricultural products, and that helps the whole economy. The farm families of Mississippi, growing the things you use every day.
In 2014, there were nearly 1 million head of cattle being raised on almost 16,000 farms here in Mississippi. But some traditional livestock producers are turning to another type of livestock as an excellent way to diversify their existing operations. Don Gaddy is an OB/GYN on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. He and his family moved here when he was 6 years old. His father, Herd Gaddy, also an OB/GYN, wanted a farm to live on. So they bought some land that was, at the time, out in the country north of Long Beach.
Of course, the city kind of grew toward us and the farm became incorporated into the city limits, but we've kept about 120 acres here as part of the farm.
At the beginning, it was a pecan farm.
But my dad's always wanted cattle, and so he started raising cattle at the same time as the pecan farming.
It was a typical farm with chickens and horses, but over time they settled on raising cattle.
I started out with Santa Gertrudis, and then I got Beefmaster, and then I had Charlet, and I've just recently bought a Brangus, which is a cross between Bramer and Angus. I mainly had them to help keep my place eaten down, so I didn't have as much work to do. And it's a pleasure.
When Don's kids went off to college, he moved back to the farm to help his dad, but he also decided he wanted to try something new.
So I decided to start trying to help with the farming, but I decided, well shoot, wouldn't it be nice to just have some deer on the property? And at the time, I really had not thought about what that meant, but I started learning about it and reading about it. So I said, it might be more economical to do deer than cattle, and so I just said, I'll try that for a little while and see what happens.
Deer farming is one of the fastest growing industries in rural America, and for some, it's a great alternative agricultural pursuit. Compared to traditional livestock, the deer industry is booming. It generates $3 billion for the U.S. economy and supports tens of thousands of jobs in communities across the country. Don built this lodge/man cave so that hunters could come and stay on the property, but stay in style on their visit. He has an exotic game permit that allows him to raise red deer, fallow deer, and axis deer.
I've only been doing it for 2 years, so my goal was to allow people to come and stay here and be able to bow hunt nice bucks and deer that people like to go bow hunt. I've done a lot of bow hunting, and so I enjoy that. But I also see that you can sell the deer for meat just like you do cattle too. So mostly what I done this year is sell live deer, but I've had a few hunts. I've let the wounded warriors come and hunt a few of the deer this year.
Don says that he likes deer farming because it's not as demanding as raising cattle.
My dad tried to do it when he was still working as a physician, but you got to be out there every day taking care of cattle, and you got to be moving them from different fields. You can't do it as a pastime. You've got to be there every day, just about. Whereas with deer, once you get the fencing up and get them in an area where they can handle themselves, they're a little easier. You don't necessarily have to feed them a lot of protein. If you want to try to grow bigger racks, then you want to feed them some protein, but they'll browse and eat without a lot of having to change fields on them and that kind of stuff. And you can raise more deer per acre than you can cattle.
Hurd is very proud of his farm and says that not an inch of it is for sale.
The Navy base joins me, and they called me and said they'd like to buy about 40 acres, and I told them it wasn't for sale. They said, well, you wouldn't do that for your country? I said, I gave 3 years during World War II, but I said, it isn't for sale. It's a piece of property to keep the family together, and all the kids and grandkids want to come back here and live here. So I think it'd be a nice place to raise kids.
Don's dad is 92 years old, and keeping this family-run operation together is special.
One of the things that I'm most proud of is that I can be back on the farm helping my dad do what he loves doing, farming, and that it help keep family together. And you know, spending time with my dad, that's great.
Part of Farm Bureau's lobbying effort each year is the annual Ag Day at the Capitol. Close to 100 volunteer leaders and farmers come to Jackson and meet with their elected representatives. Because of the renovation work being done on the Capitol building, this year's event was held across the street at First Baptist Church.
Well, we do this every year, Greg, to let our people have the opportunity to come to Jackson and meet their legislators here in Jackson, to let them know about our concerns, but more importantly, to lend them my support and let them know that we're here for them and to support them in that important thing that they're doing for us over there at the legislature.
Kevin Simpson is a row crop farmer from Benton County in North Mississippi. He's a regular attendee at this function.
It's always important for us as farmers to have a good working relationship with our legislators as far as policy development and things of that nature. And you know, on our farm is a predominantly row crop farm. It's good to always have a voice in the legislature that'll listen to you and someone that you can talk to about your issues.
Senator Russell Jolly is in a unique position. He's a state senator, but he's also a farmer and a Farm Bureau volunteer leader. He says the importance of days like this can't be overstated.
This is the main reason I got into politics, was when I first come down here with Farm Bureau on the legislative day, and you could see how much agriculture, we needed more people in agriculture. And I was, you know, that's the main reason I run, was because of Farm Bureau. Well, it means everything in the world that when people come to Jackson and the rest of the legislature see the rural people out of rural Mississippi come to Jackson, present their issues, it makes all the difference in the world. I don't know what the rural people would do without Farm Bureau. It means a lot.
The keynote speaker this year was none other than the governor of Mississippi, Phil Bryant, who has an agricultural background.
My grandparents and family were from Moorhead, Mississippi in Sunflower County, so we were all cotton farmers in those days, and as everybody seemed to do, my family actually farmed on property owned by other people. And so I can remember in those days in the Delta, growing up around agriculture, it was the entire portion of our life. Whatever we ate and what most people wore and whatever we hunted dealt with the seasons and the farm, and if we had time off, we would spend it in the woods. What a wonderful time those are.
The attendees were also glad to hear Governor Bryant's appreciation of the agriculture industry in the state.
Just now, 29% of the workforce, 29%, about a third of the workforce in the state of Mississippi, works in the agribusiness. And so we need to look at how that impacts us. Well, I can tell you it's about an $8 billion a year industry. Your industry adds $8 billion a year to a $100 billion GDP economy. So it is important enough that we should begin to pay more attention to it. 37,300 farmers. 37,300 farms here in the state of Mississippi. It is, to me, the glue that holds this state together. If you were somehow to remove it, and we hope that it never could happen and never will happen, but if you remove the farmers, the ranchers, those that raise the crops that we all depend upon, the forest products that are so important. We are the Saudi Arabia of wood here in Mississippi. So our forest products are helping build homes and generate new forms of energy and do that dynamic growth within the natural resources industry that is so important to the state of Mississippi. But somehow remove that, and we're a third world country.
It was wonderful to have the governor here today and to hear his support for agriculture and how he grew up in the agricultural community and having roots both in the Delta as growing up and now being a neighbor of mine down in southwest Mississippi and having a little small farm. I look forward to working with him. He's going to be a good friend of agriculture.
After we shot this feature, one of the people we interviewed, Kevin Simpson of Benton County, passed away as a result of a boating accident while on an outing with his son. Losing Kevin is a huge loss to Farm Bureau, to all of agriculture, and of course to his family. Our thoughts and prayers are with them during this trying time.
The farm families of Mississippi provide an abundance of good, nutritious, and safe food to Mississippi and the world. As research and development reveals advancements in biotechnology, it is possible to raise crops and herds that are disease-free, lean, and that require fewer chemicals. Not only does that result in safer foods, it also results in a safer environment, ensuring that our waterways and wildlife are clean and healthy. The farm families of Mississippi, ensuring safe food and a safe environment.
And welcome back to Voices of Agriculture. Most adults today didn't grow up on a farm and have little knowledge of what goes on there. But there are several educational programs around the state that introduce students to new opportunities in the agriculture industry. Mantachie High School in northeast Mississippi has a long and proud tradition of agricultural education. Each year, many of the 350 students take classes in ag science, forestry, and meat science. And for the last quarter of a century, they've all been active in the FFA.
Our FFA chapter is very active. We're involved in all kind of leadership activities, summer camps, conventions. We go to national convention, we show livestock. And when a kid goes, we try to pay, the FFA tries to pay the way for these kids to go because we don't feel a kid should be restricted because of their financial situation.
C.W. Franks is a graduate of Mantachie High and has been teaching at the school since 1989. He and fellow instructor Joe Rogers helped the students come up with projects to raise money for the FFA.
I know that we have a unique FFA program here because I've seen several throughout our state. We have some things here that I know a lot of them do not have, and some of them we did in the ways we described by doing our fundraisers.
Now these fundraisers aren't your typical door-to-door wrapping paper sales. These are big-time projects that raise big-time money.
We have one of only 2 meat processing facilities in the state, in high schools. We teach kids the proper way to break down a deer because it's relevant to a beef carcass. It's the same cuts, and this way they have access to it where we don't have access to a tremendous amount of beef every year. We do plenty of white-tailed deer and can still learn all the cuts and the breakdowns and how to properly process it.
They processed about 350 deer this winter, but they can also process beef and hogs.
We have 1 beef hanging in the cooler right now. We'll do 10 to 15 beef a year. We'll do about 100 hogs each year. Those are pretty much the majority of what we do and have availability of.
In addition to the meat lab, these students also have a working sawmill.
Using the sawmill, they are learning more about, instead of just going to the store and getting the lumber, they're seeing what the sawmills and loggers are doing to actually get that product on the shelf for them that they normally go buy. They're learning board footage. They can figure out each day in a class period how much board footage they can cut in one period and figure out ways to be able to be more efficient, less waste, and be able to up their board footage with certain things they do in measuring and setting the sawmill.
We was just running the sawmill to cut up some lumber for us to build a shed to actually put the sawmill under for a more permanent spot. We also use it more for if somebody wants to bring in lumber for them to cut up and build a bench, or say build them whatever they want to that they can't get at a hardware store. We just cut it up here.
The money they make from all these projects is kept at the local bank and is watched over by the FFA officers.
We try to use all the money raised by the students on the students. It may be in the form of fixing a piece of equipment or carrying them to a livestock show and helping pay for their hotel room or their entry fee.
And the kids really appreciate the program and the instructors that make it work.
Mr. Joe, the teacher, he's a really good teacher. He taught me more than what I should know. This program, I don't think it could get any better.
We do have a good FFA program going here, and I'm thankful for having all this stuff because I know a lot of people don't get to do this stuff when they're in high school, and some people probably don't even use the stuff that we use in their life after they get out of high school. Some of the stuff that we do here we can take on and make a career or something out of it. Help pass it down to generation. Mr. Joe and Mr. CW, they ought to get a lot more thanks for what they do, because without them, this ag program or anything else that we have out here would not be possible.
This program is not just about passing on knowledge. It's about preparing these young people to be well-rounded citizens and partners in the agriculture community. In our Meet a Farmer segment this time, we visit with someone who is becoming a rare commodity in Mississippi, a dairy farmer.
We're the third generation on this home farm. My grandfather and them bought the place in 1928, started milking cows in the early 30s. My father and mother and my uncle were all partners in the dairy. And then in 1999, I bought 50% of the operation. In 2007, Beth and I bought the remaining half of the dairy, so we own 100% of the operation now.
Currently, the Grahams have about 40 baby calves that are on milk. Jeremy spends a lot of his time making sure that they have everything they need.
I go out at 9 o'clock every night before bedtime and check to make sure any of them, see if any of them's calving. If they're calving, I get to get up every 2 hours to check on the progress of them. The next morning, we bring the calves up, we put them in individual huts, and we feed the baby calf in an individual hut on a bottle for about 3 or 4 days. And then we transition them over to a 5-gallon bucket with a hose and a nipple on it. We get them accustomed to sucking that bucket, and then once they get about a week and a half, 2 weeks old, we move them to a group of about 6 to 8 calves, and then we raise them in that group of 6 to 8 calves on a what we call a blue cow barrel. Some of them's white barrels, but we raise them that way till they're about 8 weeks old. We wing them and then move them out onto pasture, and the heifers stay on pasture till they're ready to calve. The cows are on grass 365 days a year.
Being in the dairy business makes you a pretty rare commodity in this state.
When I started in 1999, there was 350 grade A dairies in Mississippi. Currently, right now, there's 95 is the last number I've seen.
But Jeremy says he wouldn't have it any other way.
It's a 7-day-a-week, 365-day a year job. Currently, we've got a real reliable crew that'll step in and pick up things whenever I get tied up doing Farm Bureau activities or going to different meetings or even when I get sick.
Beth is an x-ray technician at a hospital in Oxford, and the Grahams have 2 girls, Mary Hatley, who is 4, and Kendall is 1.5. We'll be right back with more of Voices of Agriculture right after this timeout. Stay with us.
It makes me furious when I hear about animals being mistreated. It would truly take a fool to put good money in these animals and then lose that money through neglect or abuse. Most farms in Mississippi are family owned and operated, and they're passed down from generation to generation. Our animals must be healthy to produce a safe and dependable source of milk and to provide for our families. We are the Farm Families of Mississippi, growing the economy.
In our Mississippi on the Menu segment this time, Nancy Freeman prepares a potato dish that incorporates 4 different dairy products.
In Mississippi, there are 95 grade A dairy herds that contributed $45 million this past year in 2014. Did you know you have to be really dedicated to be a dairy farmer because cows are milked at least twice a day, every day, using sanitary milking machines. So think about it. If you're a dairy farmer, you have to be committed. You know, dairy products are the primary source for calcium in the American diet. It accounts for 76% of the calcium that we consume in our foods. And most people, on average, over a year consume at least 22 gallons of milk. It's good for you and delicious. You know, this particular recipe is one using potatoes, but it's got 4 wonderful dairy ingredients in it. It's got milk, it's got cheese, real butter, and it's got cream cheese. These 4 things are going to make this a delicious dish. We started off with some onions, and I've got it sauteing in a little bit of the butter that's in there. And to this, I'm going to add some cream cheese that I've softened up a little bit of mayonnaise, for flavoring, we're going to add some ranch-style dressing mix and a little bit of salt. We're going to stir this up and let it cook down until it's a nice, rich, creamy sauce. And as we get this blended, then we're going to add our milk to make it the consistency that we want. You know, there's so many delicious ways that you can use dairy products. I love it just for snacking with the different types of cheeses or on crackers. It's great for parties and all sorts of different events and things that you can have. All right, now that we've got this blended together, I'm going to add a little bit of milk. This will continue cooking down till it gets to a nice, rich, creamy consistency. When this gets to the texture that I need it to be, you'll pour it over your potatoes, and the potatoes have been already parboiled. Only takes about 8 minutes to do those, so it's a quick and easy item. And let's take a look at our finished product. Here's those potatoes, ready to go, wonderful side. So check us out at our website at growingmississippi.org or follow us on Facebook at Farm Families of Mississippi. Enjoy!
And that's all the time we have for this edition of Voices of Agriculture. We hope you've enjoyed the show and will be with us again next time. For all of us here at the Mississippi Farm Bureau, thanks for watching.